Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Inner Changemaker. Today, we got quite the guest for you guys. He is the co-founder of Quest Nutrition, a company you might have heard of, which they classify as a unicorn startup valued at over $1 billion. That's right, $1 billion. He's also the co-founder and host of the Impact Theory, which is a show that has been gaining tons of traction, tons of views, and they've recently gotten some amazing viral clips to really talk about some of the world's brightest minds. And fun fact, we were just talking a little offhand that it actually started as an in-house project, I believe, for Quest employees. So I'm glad that they've expanded to make the impact for the rest of the world. And so we're glad. I'm sure we'll talk about that during the interview. Our man, he is on a mission to do a couple things to really create empowering media IP as well as accelerate mission-based business. He's pretty hell-bent on helping people develop the skills they need so that they can improve themselves, improve their mind, and ultimately create their impact. And he is a big believer that he wants to use business to actually address the dual pandemics of physical and mental malnutrition. And he identified himself as a learner, somebody who will most definitely outwork you. And in his own words, he has a gift to endure the pain of the process. So welcome to the show, Tom Bilyeu.
Thanks for having me on, man. It's an honor to be here. And thank you for the very kind introduction.
Yeah, well, I know you take pride in being kind of, getting people out of their element and trying to go for the heavyweight, interview belt. I saw that recent post that you did with Gary, but I'm really curious because you've recently had some amazing success with Impact Theory, and you guys have had a couple clips that have just really gone viral in the social media sense. We have Mel Robbins talking about why motivation is not what you think it is. It's garbage, right? And then we have Simon Sinek with the millennial question. When you look this up, there's like 10 other videos that have gone kind of viral, just based off of that one. So how does that feel? I mean, to kind of be creating content and to have the world kind of, be sharing, some of the things that you guys are creating?
It feels great, man. Like we're really, really living through a magical time. And as somebody that grew up without the internet, I didn't get my first email account until I was in college, and then didn't have like an actual way to get online until I had already graduated. Like I'm really aware of what an amazing time this is and the opportunity to be able to reach people. And not only to be able to share with people what I've learned, but to be able to get from other people what they've learned.
Yeah.
It's amazing, amazing.
I always thought that, to me, as somebody who started out, and I would love to build some context to your story, but as I know you guys started this as as an inside project for your own employees. I know you're a big fan of the culture. I'm sure we're going to talk about the belief system you guys have instilled. But as someone who started with not coming from a successful startup or having New York bestsellers or any of this, I always looked at interviewing as like the modern day mentorship. You know what I mean? The ability to create the relationships and to, really take the knowledge that some of these people have done years and years of research and be able to distill it to a community. For you, that you have access to, literally billionaires and Peter Diamandis and some of the brightest minds in the world. How do you think those interviews have really impacted the way you operate, or at least the way you kind of see the world?
I mean, to your point, it really has become a modern version of mentorship, and you're able to leverage building an audience to bring on amazing people and get them to share their very hard-won lessons. That has been incredible for me, and there's no question that many of the relationships that I built, Peter Diamandis being just an amazing example of that, of somebody who did not know me, I had never met him, and I wrote him a letter and happened to have another guest on the show, Rainn Wilson from The Office, the guy that played Dwight Schrute. Okay. We got him on the show, and he knew Peter, and he had a great time on the show. And so because of that, he said, I'll introduce you to Peter. And then so I said, well, if you can get him this letter, that would be amazing. Wrote him this letter, explained to him that he had already been very important to me in my entrepreneurial journey, even though we'd never met, that his books had had just a huge impact on me.
Wow.
Read those, had the warm intro from Rain, came on the show. And then Peter and I really, he even says in the middle of the episode, like, this is the beginning of a friendship. And we really have become very close. I'm now on the board of the X Prize. So it's really one of many amazing examples of where you really have an opportunity to connect with somebody in the interview, to bring value by introducing them to your audience. By, you and I were talking about this before we started recording. The reason I'm trying to get people beyond their loop is that when you can do that, when you can help them into new territory, you're allowing them to create a piece of content that isn't just a replication of something else. And so often, and this was the thing that in my preparation, I really began to realize, like, everybody's asking the same questions. Yep. And so just like being aware of their interviews and being aware of what they've been asked over and over and over, I thought, here's an opportunity to really get beyond that, to ask new questions, to give them a platform to reach people in a new way so that their body of interviews can be taken as a whole. Whereas now, like, virtually every interview you're going to see with somebody is going to be the same. And so they'll be, and it's usually like, like a 1 or 2 year loop, and it changes sort of slowly over time. But it was really sort of startling how you were just getting the same interview over and over. So that became my premise, was if I'm really going to build a relationship with these people, if it's really going to be meaningful mentorship, like, why would I want to ask the same questions that have already been asked? I can just go watch those videos, and then why would that be valuable to them? So that really came to define my stuff.
That is so interesting, Tom, because, it's pretty amazing watching some of the content you're creating and just it's not even like a new spin. It's not like you're repurposing old content. You're actually getting people to tell some new stories that really gives, I think, the character more in depth. Hopefully we can do that with, Tom and the story of impact theory and just Quest in general, because you guys have done some pretty amazing things. So for people that are maybe not familiar with your story, I thought this would be a kind of an interesting way for you to kind of go through the story. I know, you've said in many different types of interviews, I think the one you did with Tim Ferriss as well, I think you just mentioned it all throughout, that you have this like addiction to pain, or you're just able to endure pain a lot. You have this like gift for it. And I found out that you actually were a part of like a cross country team where you did running, right? Back in the day.
Yes, I did.
So did anything like that? Did that connect, or like where did that all kind of connect?
That's interesting. So I ran cross country for 4 years, and for the first 3 years, it definitely was not that. And I was literally the slowest person in the league. So not the slowest person on my team, the slowest person in the entire league. I was a little bit heavy set, so my thighs would rub together until they bled, which was just phenomenally enjoyable.
It's a great illustration.
And so, right. So I would have to wear, like, first I started trying Vaseline. I would put Vaseline on my legs, and then by the end of the race, it would still wear off. And so I had to get pretty creative with ultimately wearing Lycra under my shorts. And I mean, I even burned through the Lycra. It was nuts.
Wow.
So don't be a chubby kid and run cross country. That's the moral of that lesson. And I wouldn't say that I'm definitely not addicted to pain. In fact, for the most part, I'm trying to avoid it. My thing is that I have a high tolerance for pain. So when it comes to something where you necessarily have to suffer, especially if the suffering is emotional, like that I'm really good at. I can really tolerate like long periods of working without a break. I can tolerate just torturous boredom. When I know what I'm fighting for, like when I know what's on the other end of that, like I have just an inhuman ability to suffer. But when I meet somebody like a David Goggins, which if people don't know David Goggins, watch the Impact Theory episode with David Goggins. That man is unreal. And like literally, I used to go way harder on like, I'm willing to suffer. And then I met him and realized that cat is willing to suffer. Literally, he's done 135-mile races. He did, oh God, I think it was 8 over 100-mile races over 8 weekends. So it's like back to back to back. I mean, it's insane. He ran the first time he ran a 100-mile race, he did it with 4 days preparation. which you can imagine that's crazy. He was like 250 pounds or something. He broke both of his feet so at mile 70, he had broken both of his feet, had shin splints, was urinating blood, couldn't make it to the bathroom, so he defecated on himself, and he still finished the race. So he had to do an additional 30 miles after all of that. I mean, it was just like crazy town. He did more than a marathon on broken feet. That's crazy. So that guy's on another planet. Like, he just really, really, really inspires me. So yeah, there are definitely people that have proven beyond what I've done, but in certainly a business context, I've done my share of suffering, no question.
Yeah, and I just thought it was so interesting, hearing the way that you've said it in terms of you identifying yourself as a learner and being able to work harder than others and just kind of tolerate that level of stress and pain. So, I mean, really, really interesting. Do you think that because you were growing up and you said you were a little chubby, did that, like, at that time, did you think you're going to create, this like health movement and quest? Like, was that part of the thinking maybe, even back then, or back then you just didn't necessarily know how that was going to, pan out or be able to make that impact in that sense?
Yeah, absolutely not. I had no focus on that, no intention of doing it whatsoever. When I was growing up, I was hell-bent to become a filmmaker, and that was it. Like, that was my mission. I went to film school. Everything in my life was really about that, was getting exceptionally good at that, going out, getting the 3-picture deal. Like, that was going to be my life. And that was initially why I got into business. So I wanted to control the access to the resources, and the only way that I was going to do that was to find a way to generate real wealth, and business seemed like the most obvious way to do that. And so I went to the business world because I wanted to be able to control my own art. And so it was, I'm going to go into business, call it 18 months. These entrepreneurs had basically hired me as a copywriter, but said, look, it's going to take us about 18 months to sell this company. Come in, help us out. Like, you can get any position you want in the company. Like, don't think of yourself as an employee. Think like a partner. And if you actually act like a partner and you're playing at that level, then you can really become a partner. Well, 18 months turned into about 8.5 years. And in that process, I really, I was just chasing money. And so I totally burned out on that and realized that I needed to do something that I was passionate about. I needed to come in and really ignite that. And so the 3 of us that, like, if you looked at a Venn diagram, so there were 3 of us in this technology company. And by the time we sold it, I had earned partnership in the company, and I'd made myself the chief marketing officer, literally starting from copywriter. So, sort of the version of starting in the mailroom. And at the end of all of that, like, knowing that I was never going to keep chasing money ever, like, I needed to do something that I was passionate about. And so I told them, look, if you guys want to keep working with me, then we've got to do something that's based on passion. It's got to be based on value creation. And if you look at a Venn diagram of where our 3 interests overlap, then it was in nutrition. And so that was something that each of us, for 3 very different reasons, had to learn about for our own lives. Sure. And so it gave me, because what I wanted to do was create value in people's lives. I wanted to help people. Like, my greatest mission in life is to pull people out of the matrix, to get that moment of awakening where somebody realizes they can do way more than they thought they could. And so for me, that's what it's all about. And I saw a really powerful opportunity to do that with Quest. And so that was what drew me to that. But that's why, I mean, that was, man, by the time we started Quest, I was already in my 30s. So it was like, it was, I had lived a whole life doing a whole lot of other things, but because I had grown up in a morbidly obese family, it was like I knew how visceral and immediate the negative impact of food can be. And there were people in my life that I loved and I wanted to help, and I knew I was going to lose too soon because of that. They'd gotten into an abusive relationship with food, and unless somebody solved that problem, and I felt like we had a unique angle on it, which everybody else was saying, eat less, exercise more, or they were, doing what's called better for you. So it was 20% less sugar. Well, sure, you can put a filter on a cigarette, but still bad for you. So, really taking a fundamentally different approach, which was to make food that people could choose based on taste, but it was actually good for them from a metabolic standpoint. So because it was so personal to me, that's what made it really exciting.
And when you guys started that with your partners and stuff, because you guys it's the same partners from the technology company, right?
Correct.
That you
Yep.
guys were, so you guys are like super close. You guys have gone through some, crazy roller coasters together. Like when you guys started that, was there a thing of saying like, we're going to start creating, content? Like how did that whole, how did you guys, like, thinking a little different, how did you guys think about creating the content? I know it was like first in-house, like whose idea was that? Like, how did that whole idea of Inside Quest like kind of start?
So we really broke the company into three different areas. So it was people, product, and process. And so
Okay. Yeah.
one of my partners, Ron, was the product guy, and no uncertain terms, just like a nutritional genius, unbelievably gifted at that, and understands human metabolism and nutrition just on another level. Like seeing him with career nutritionists, and this was a guy that was in technology, but seeing him talk to career nutritionists, doctors, like everybody, they were all enthralled by his level of understanding. It was really amazing. And then my other business partner, Mike, is just process. Like he's unbelievable at that. And that's just how his mind works. Grew up on an Iowa farm, like really gets it. And so us being in manufacturing, he was such a linchpin. For me, it was all about marketing. It was about creative. It was about, I'm a filmmaker by trade. So it was like, what I could see, and this was back in 2009 when we first started conceiving of the company, I could see that social media was about to change everything. So I brought my two partners in, I sat them down, and I said, look, this is my vision for how we do this. It's all about creating community. It's all about leveraging social media. It's all about celebrating the customer and doing things through content, and just like a totally radical approach, which now is self-evident, but this is like 2017. This was back in 2009.
Right. Yeah,
Everybody was saying like Facebook is a distraction. How's it ever going to be good for business? So that is, when you look at Quest, it really is a unique fingerprint of the three of us. And without Ron's obsession with nutrition, without Mike's ability to create process, and without my obsession, for psychology and marketing and content, like it really just wouldn't have come together the way that it did. And timing, like this is one thing entrepreneurs never want to admit, like timing is huge. And because we were early adopters of social media, like we were really one of the first businesses out there that just bet everything from a marketing perspective on social. That's why we took off. It was an open playing field. There was nobody else there.
And for people that are watching this or listening to this, I mean, you can hear why we had to have Tom Bilyeu on. I mean, this guy, they're crushing it on all their different channels, from Facebook. I mean, over 50,000, YouTube, 45,000, Instagram, like 40,000. You guys are creating some of the best content. And to think that you guys wanted to instill this kind of belief system for your employees, and you wanted to have that education kind of for them. I mean, it just kind of shows what kind of culture you guys wanted to build from the very beginning. So make sure to follow them. But I noticed something when I was looking at your belief systems. One of the last ones, I think it is the last one, which is like take the red pill. And I was like, oh man, they really love these like matrix references, which I think are really great. What does the red pill mean to you, and what does that mean to your company in terms of operating and thinking differently?
Well, it really comes down to, so in the movie The Matrix, it's about waking up in the real world, right? So Morpheus tells Neo, I'm not promising you that it's going to be easy. I'm just promising you that it will be real. And so that's how I think of the red pill. Like most people, in fact, everybody has pulled a veil of lies over their own eyes. Now, for most people, those lies are negative and they hold them back. For other people, they're empowering. And so that's actually one of the bullet points in the impact theory belief system is that, look, if I say to you the human potential is limitless, but that's a lie, but it's an empowering lie. It's like you have to do and believe that which moves you towards your goals, right? So I don't overvalue the truth, because here's the reality. Your brain is encased in total darkness and total silence, and yet it transforms the electrochemical signals that it's getting, when like photons fall in your eye, it turns into electrochemical signals that your brain interprets, and it creates this world around you that you see and perceive, and you think it's objectively real. But in truth, the experience that you're having is entirely internal. It's entirely in your mind. And so once you understand that, once you get like, this is all a construct, this is my brain's best guess at what it is. Like where your optic nerve connects to the eye, there's actually a dime-sized blank spot in your vision. But yet when you look, you don't perceive that at all, right? Because your brain is going, I'm pretty sure I know what goes there, and it fills it in. So I mean, it's once I realized that my brain is lying to me, maybe with the best of intentions, but my brain is lying to me. So if my brain is going to lie to me, then I'm going to pick and choose what I believe. And so here's one way for people to really get this. If I say something negative to you, I'm going to have to say 5 positive things to counteract it. So your brain is already lying to you and saying that the negative things are more important, because your brain's job from an evolutionary perspective is to keep you safe, right? To keep you from not being eaten by a tiger, not being ostracized from the group, when being ostracized meant that you would literally, I mean, it's almost certain death.
Yeah.
So I get it, like from an evolutionary perspective, thank you, it's very kind. But in a modern context where I can go to Ralph's and get food, it's like, it's not necessary anymore. So now I think we have to be way more selective about what do we listen to, right? So you may not have free will, but you have free won't, right? So you may not be able to control the ideas that pop into your mind. Like, negative things are going to be there. The negative voice is going to be ever present. I promise you, you can do your best to try to silence it, but it's always going to be there. That, from an evolutionary perspective, that's his job. So it's just not going to go away. But you don't have to act on that. You don't have to listen to that. You don't have to double down on it. So it's like understanding the neurobiology of your brain, understanding the structures of your brain, understanding what it's designed to do, then you can really begin to take a hold of it. And to me, that's what the red pill is about. It's really understanding the way that your mind works, not believing everything that it tells you, waking up in the quote unquote real world, which is that you have the ability to believe pretty much anything you want. I mean, look, I don't mean that like I can believe that gravity doesn't exist and now I'm going to walk off of, like, you're still going to fall.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So let's all embrace that. But like, certainly with the things that your brain tells you, you have a choice in there. Some of the things are going to empower you. Some of them are going to hold you back. If you focus on the things that empower you and move you towards your goals, you'll just be way better off, even if they're not actually true. So that's my thing. I don't overvalue the truth in that way. I look at it. I do my best to like really assess, but I'm going to lean on the things that move me forward.
And I think that's it's so interesting. We had a number of people that have come on the show. One person that comes to mind, Sean Stevenson, who you might know, and he said, yeah, the brain is meant to help you survive, not thrive, right? So you have to make that choice. And sometimes it seems kind of basic, but he was also, I remember, he was telling me that, common sense is not common practice. Right. So for people that, you've interacted with, such, awesome people, in your company and people that watch Impact Theory, what do you think is it that keeps people in the matrix? Is it them choosing to be in the matrix, or is it something else?
It's really the concept. So David Foster Wallace gave a speech called "This is Water," and he talks about how the fish is the last one to realize that it's actually floating in water. For me, the human equivalent of that is your belief system. So the culture gives you all these beliefs about what you can and can't do, what you're capable of, what you're not capable of. Like, let's take Icarus, right? The most infuriating piece of mythology ever that tells people, hey, don't try to be too great because it may melt, your wings and you're going to come crashing down to earth. That's like the most absurd advice I've ever heard in my life. Yeah. Like, figure out how to execute, build better wings. I'm down for that. But telling people like, don't dream too big is literally crazy. That's why people are held back. So they've taken all of these things in. So many of them sort of invisibly have permeated their belief system. They don't even realize it. So here's the biggest one that people do. And Carol Dweck wrote an amazing book on this called Mindset. Yeah. Most people have a fixed mindset, right? I'm sure you know all about this. They believe that their talent and intelligence are fixed traits that they can't do anything to improve. Like, once you believe that, like, you're trapped in the matrix. So it really is about going to a growth mindset, but it's not going to feel real. Like, telling yourself, like right now, telling myself that, hey, you could really become a great singer, it just doesn't seem true. Yeah. But it's like, I've never pushed myself. And the people that are starting to do research in this area, like Perfect Pitch, which I thought either you were born with or not, and they showed that they could get 100% of the people in like a, second or third grade class, like 100% of them could develop perfect pitch. And that's when I was like, all right, I give up. I'm not putting any more limitations on myself. Like, Elon Musk is going to, terraform Mars. It's like, you might as well just believe it. And sometimes believing it isn't like, oh, we're capable of it right now. Like, I don't think I'm capable of a lot of things. I just believe, and this is important, I believe I can become capable of anything. So if I'm willing to put in the work and acquire the skill set, then you can do anything. So, and a lot of that, like I tell people, some of the things that, like when I say that and you start thinking of things that you just can't allow yourself to believe you could ever do, like the answer may be, well, first you have to make humans immortal. Right? Okay. Well, that may need to happen. But like, first of all, there are species on this planet that already do live forever. Like barring traumatic injury, they will live forever. There's jellyfish that live forever. Like, so apoptosis, which is programmed cell death, it's like, it's a thing. It's a program that's being run. So if you could back out of that, if you could figure out how to, like telomeres, which are like on the ends of your DNA, if I'm not mistaken, I'm now sort of at the edge of what I understand in full disclosure, but it's like the length of the telomere matters, right? So as the telomere shortens, as it replicates, it's like there's so many, and this is what I think is happening. The telomere is like a fuse, right? So it's like the cell knows every time I replicate, there's a chance of being there being damage to the DNA, like from sun exposure or toxins or whatever, right? Yeah. So, hey, I just know that roughly about the length of my telomere, when that gets to 0, I should probably die. And that's essentially aging, and you get to the point where you die. And that's because if you didn't, like the level of mutations would be so problematic that you would just fall apart anyway. Right. That's again, edge of my understanding here. That's just sort of how I understand it. But that, like, those are solvable problems. And I really believe that somebody is going to solve them. And it's only going to be somebody who actually believes they can solve it, though. And that's the important part. Like, people really need to understand that. Like, humans lead with belief. You don't do something and then believe that you can. You have to believe you can before you have any earthly right to believe it. And then once you're able to convince yourself to believe that you can acquire that skill, then you'll actually take the steps to acquire it. And that's the, like, really simple gap people need to get. Like, you just won't take the first step if you don't believe it.
Right. I mean, Tom, barring, I would love to try to hack immortality, with you on this interview. But I mean, I think it's so true because I know you talk about beliefs, and that's probably why you guys have 25 different beliefs, you know what I mean, that are all really awesome. But you reminded me of something that I don't know if you're familiar with Dan Sullivan's work. He runs Strategic Coach.
Yeah, he's on the Genius Network, right?
That's correct. He also has a podcast with Peter Diamandis. Nice. And so he has this thing called the 4 C's. Right. And he I don't know if it's like 4 C's of business or 4 C's of entrepreneurship, but the last one is confidence. And he says everybody loves confidence, right? Everybody could think of a moment when they're confident. Confident means you've done it. Confident means you know you can do it. Confident means you got that swagger to pull it off, right? But he goes, that's the last thing though, right? What's the first two? The first one is commitment, right? And then the second one is courage. And courage means that you actually have to believe. You're doing something, you're stepping out into the unknown, right? You're having courage to do something you've never done before, because the third C is capabilities. You have to develop the ability to do it before you got that confidence, right? So I love that you say that, because I think so many times people are trying to, it's almost like they feel like an imposter a little bit, and they forget that sometimes it's just a matter of believing in it. And it's almost like if you have enough conviction, you can convince everybody around you that you have that capability as well, or you're developing that capability, right?
No question.
So let me ask you this, because from a community builder point of view, or from any entrepreneur point of view, we all want to instill some great values and belief systems. Like, how do you have a certain process or framework, the way that you guys came up with your 25 belief systems that other leaders, other CEOs could kind of take and be able to kind of come up with their own belief systems? Or do you think it's something that has to kind of be a little more natural to you?
Well, it's interesting. So the Impact Theory 25 belief system was really me going, what did I change in my own mind to go from having a fixed mindset to being where I'm at? So, I mean, literally, I went from scrounging in my couch cushions to find enough change to put gas in my car to building a $1 billion brand. So, like, what did I actually do? Like, what were the steps along the way? And I'm somewhat grateful that so many of the lessons in my life I've had to learn the hard way. And so through that, like there's enough sort of pain involved that you really start to codify things in your life so that you don't repeat the mistakes. So they were the 25 things that I actually did to get where I'm at. So they feel universal to me. Like it feels like these are the 25 bullet points. I don't think, I'm very open, but I don't think that like if everybody created theirs, like they would use different words to be sure, they'd probably have different numbers to be sure, but at the end of the day, I think it would all boil down to the same things. Like that is what you need to do to your mind to get to the point where you truly have a growth mindset. You believe you can do anything you set your mind to. You know how to acquire skills. You know how to stay humble. You know how to learn. Like they're just the fundamental building blocks to skill acquisition. And at the end of the day, skill acquisition is all that matters. Like you actually have to be able to execute. So yeah, I mean that to me is like sort of the universal thing. So the only way that I know to pass them on is to live by example. That's like first and foremost. And then the other is to inspire people by bringing on amazing people that can talk about those same things from 1,000 different angles. And that was originally why I started the show. Was I was so terrified that people would memorize the bullet points but wouldn't actually live them. So for instance, people will come up to me and be like, bullet point 12 is this. And I'm like, I literally have no idea. To this day, I don't know. Like I know that number 1 is human potential is nearly limitless. And I know 25 is take the red pill. But like sort of in between there, it's like, I don't know. But I'm living each and every one of them, right? And so living it, like I don't care if you memorize them, like understand them, internalize them, live by them. That's the real key. So I wanted people to see like all these people that you admire that have just had amazing levels of success, the kind of success that you're aspiring to. All of them are going to, unprompted, like they don't know the 25 bullet points when they walk in, but all of them are going to say some variation of those bullet points. And it will be really rare that somebody will contradict one. I'm not saying it never happens, but dude, it is insanely rare. So people began to see like, whoa, like all these people, like they're saying the same things over and over and over. But I mean, it's wonderful because you're getting it from all these different angles, right? So you're hearing like maybe the way I was telling the story didn't resonate with you, but the way that Peter Diamandis tells the story, oh man, now I get it. Like, okay, it makes a lot of sense. Or the way that Gary Vee said it, oh, okay, now I get it. It makes a lot of sense. Like all of that stuff is just so important. So that's, at the end of the day, it has to be real. And I think the 25 bullet points are real.
I mean, we just spent, all this time chatting about beliefs and, you kind of going through, these were some of the steps that you took to kind of went from, where you were to building $1 billion brand. I mean, I'm sure there was many, but were there some moments where you thought, like this was impossible, or you had a belief around something and then you were able to kind of break through and that kind of, you kind of reference that point for everything else? Or do you find that you're just constantly breaking your own belief patterns all the time?
There's definitely like times where I'll catch myself with a fixed mindset belief and you have to like break through. And that's really like those moments are the moments that I love, because those moments are the time where my team gets to see like, this is how I handle it. Right. So leading by example is so critical. But if you're like perfect and people don't get to see the struggle, it's so easy for them to dismiss you. So one of the ways like, and the way that they dismiss you is to say, oh, you're extraordinary. You're just born like that, right? Yo, that's just how your mind works. Like I actually struggle. So for them, like I've made no attempt to be cool. I make no attempt to hide the things that I'm struggling with because I am supremely confident that I'll make it to the other side, that I'll figure out the path, that I will, recognize when I'm having a fixed mindset, that I'll have the humility to admit I'm actually not thinking about this the right way, that I will adjust very quickly, and that I will then identify what skill I'm lacking, acquire that skill if it's important, and then execute against it. And so I know my team is going to get to see that, but they're going to get to see it the most when I'm actually struggling or I fail. So that kind of stuff is really, really critical.
Out of curiosity, it just dawned on me. I mean, the show you guys are running is called Impact Theory. So did you guys have like a theory behind, like, what does impact theory like mean? Is there like a hypothesis behind it, or just a cool name? Because I know you use it a lot in terms of the different shows that you guys are having.
Yeah, so it literally is my theory on how to impact people, which is like I was saying, my greatest joy in life and the reason that I believe that I'm here is to pull people out of the matrix. We've already talked about what that means exactly. And so I've worked in the inner cities a lot, and I've seen the damaging effect that a negative mindset has on entire swaths of humanity. And so I started asking myself, okay, I play a game called No Bullshit, What Would It Take? So no bullshit, what would it take to end metabolic disease? Well, the answer is you have to make food that people choose based on taste, because people eat for pleasure. They don't eat for sustenance. So you have to make food they choose on taste, and it happens to be good for them. That's the only way to solve that problem. Okay, so Quest is born. The no BS answer, what would it take to end what I call generational poverty, which isn't about money, it's about mindset, but it's about your parents hand you a limiting mindset because their parents handed them a limiting mindset because their parents, so on and so forth. So how would you really break that? So I know that the only way that humans assimilate truly disruptive information is through narrative, right? We are meaning-making machines. Humans tell stories. It's how we convey things. Stories contain, like, we connect to things emotionally, right? So it isn't so much intellectual. If you really want someone to get it, hit them in the emotional center. So the only way for us to do that is with narrative. So I was like, okay, well, that means I'm going to be dealing in one of 5 areas: books, comic books, TV shows, movies, video games. Those are the 5 most potent forms of narrative that we have today. So if I'm actually going to, because all I care about is scale, right? So I could do one-on-one. I could go around, mentor people one-on-one, and maybe by the time I die, I actually change like 10 or 15 people. And that would be very satisfying for some people. That would be torturous for me because I believe in scale. Like, I think there's a solution to virtually every problem at scale. And certainly those are the only ones that get me excited. So I want to affect just a freakish amount of people. So to do that, I really believe that we have to tap into the power of media. Now, we're living through an era where I can leverage my unique skill set to build a community through social media and then essentially point that community at these traditional pop culture. Like, we want stuff that is entertaining first and foremost. So pointing them at these pop culture vehicles to look for virality, and then we'll back the things that are going viral. We've got a whole thing, and I could literally do a 6-hour show just on what we're planning on that side and how we're going to create it and the types of things and how, like, what we've learned from Disney and a total merchandising strategy and how every piece of content you create has to feed into the brand ethos. I mean, like, on and on and on. I won't do that here. But because that was what this was all about, like, the name Impact Theory just made sense. And we actually considered calling it Impact Machine, but we were like, we couldn't be wrong. Like, this is our theory today, but will it be our theory tomorrow? Like, we'll test it out. We'll see if it works. Look, I'm the learner, right? So I'm not afraid to be wrong. And the moment I realize that the strategy that we're currently employing is wrong, I'll shift and change. And maybe one day we'll rebrand Impact Machine, but for now it's Impact Theory.
And you guys better follow Tom Bilyeu at Tom Bilyeu, or you can just look up Impact Theory. I mean, they got a whole number of videos and everything going on in social media. And, you know, you just even interacting with you, Tom, I mean, it's very clear that you guys are thinking and operating at a bigger level with a bigger mindset, thinking about scale, thinking about impact. And that's something that I really, you know, admire for you about you guys. And even though we're not going to spend 6 hours talking about your media strategy, you know, and this is a little selfish as well, but for a lot of creators out there, a lot of individuals that, you know, whether they identify themselves as a media company or what have you, but they're creating things to, in one way, shape, or form, to inspire others. I mean, what advice do you have for people that are either just starting out or building their communities in terms of this media game?
It's all about adding value, and I just cannot stress that enough. Like, one, you need to actually be good at something, and that thing then is what you're passing on to people. And here's the reality. Like, I spent, now at this point, it's like 17 years. So going on 2 decades, like, doing business, like actually learning to be an entrepreneur. So then coming on and talking about it, and also, like, definitely more than 2 decades figuring out mindset. And so I'm looking retrospectively at the things that I've learned, that I've actually put to the test, that I've gotten astonishing results, you know, because of, and it's like, okay, here's what I've learned and here's what I'm learning. But if you don't have that, then man, it becomes a lot harder. Like everybody's
Sure.
trying to come out of the gate teaching instead of learning. And so I just think learn, learn, learn. So if
Yeah.
you're in the position of being a learner and you really want to create content, you want to build community, build it entirely around learning, like period. Don't try to teach anyone anything. Like try to let them learn with you and then get so unbelievably good at learning, like getting amazing people on your show, educating people and yourself, right, in a totally new way, doing something radically interesting, like buy a $5,000 car, put a canopy on the back. I mean, this is literally like what Rainn Wilson did. He did an interview show where it was like the back of a van, and he put a simple, I think it was even like a single camera setup. That may not be true, but I'm almost certain it's a single camera setup in the back of a van, and he would drive two people, and so that they didn't have to go anywhere, and he would do the interviews. So we got incredible people like Elon Musk and just like amazing people. Now he's famous, but like discount that for a second. The genius of building a mobile set that was dirt cheap and going to the people, like that's brilliant. So if you were, if somebody threw $5,000 at this and drove around their own town, or just moved to a major city and do it, right? Like, and that's that's literally just off the top of my head. There are 1,000 other ways that you could really learn and let people learn with you, but in a unique and interesting way that nobody else is doing.
And what do you and this is, maybe you can tell me if this is too secretive or not, but I know you guys are doing different series and everything. What's one of the series that you guys are doing that you think not a lot of people are necessarily thinking about in terms of creating content? Like, we have interviews, right? We have, kind of like motivational, kind of quote, like kind of cool, videos where it's like more videography almost, what are maybe a little different genre that you guys have, focused a little energy on, and it's kind of proven some great results for you guys?
Well, the ones that have proven that you didn't mention already is relationship theory, which I do with my wife, which is my wife and I literally talking about like how, so we've been married now for almost 15 years, been together for almost 17 years. So, and built businesses together. She was one of the founding team members at Quest. We've co-founded Impact Theory together. So like, how have we worked as closely as we have? And we got together when we were young. So how did we grow together instead of apart? Like, what does that look like? So that shows, like, literally it started just as a Valentine's Day special episode of Q&A. It was like, hey, everybody, doing Q&A today with my wife. Ask us about relationship stuff. It was just overwhelming people. The response was incredible. And so it's become one of our fastest growing pieces of content. So that's been a surprise hit for us.
Wow. That's really badass, and I really appreciate you sharing with us, because I know you guys are just doing some ultra cool stuff. I got a last couple questions here before we wrap up. The show itself, as I mentioned to you, it is about legacy over currency, and I mean, you run literally one of the perfect named shows to be on here. But how does creating all this content, like, how does Tom think about legacy, especially at this stage of building companies, selling companies, and being able to just be in the position that you're in? How do you kind of internalize and think about your own legacy?
I don't think about legacy at all. Legacy is totally meaningless to me. I think when you die, it's like a light switch turning off. And once it's gone, it's gone. Now, I plan to live forever, so there's
we
that.
Talked about that. Yeah.
I really am about, like, what can you do right now today that makes you feel most alive? Now, I think that humans, and certainly this is powerfully true for me, humans are wired to enjoy being of service to the rest of the group. So we live in this miraculous time where the single greatest marketing vehicle you could ever hope to have is doing cool stuff for other people. Like that, if you can find a way to leverage your unique skill set, and this is important, your unique skill set, something you've worked hard to obtain, if you can find a way to leverage that in service of other people, nothing will make you feel more fulfilled. So that's what I'm approaching this from the standpoint of brain chemistry, man. The game that you're playing is a game of brain chemistry. If helping other people made you vomit and feel terribly about yourself, you would never do it. So like, people need to recognize that's okay. It is okay to be driven by what makes you feel like you're doing something beautiful, by what makes you feel alive, by what becomes your bliss. Like, that's awesome. Like, follow that. And it just so happens that the way humans are wired, we love to help other people. We love to see amazing things happen for people that we care about. And when you can extend that to more people, when you can have an abundance mindset instead of a scarcity mindset, instead of feeling like, man, like if I help this person, now they're succeeding and it's a zero-sum game. So if they win, I lose. Like, it's not like that. Like, this is really the longest game you can play. And always encourage people to play the long game. The longest game you can play is to do amazing stuff for other people with absolutely no expectation of anything in return. So for instance, when I go do a talk, my promise to everybody is, barring some weird schedule thing that I can't imagine right now, I will stay as long as there is a question. So I've answered questions 6, 8 hours. After a talk, I will just stand there and answer questions. Now, why? Because it feels awesome and I want to help people. And so many people like did cool stuff for me when they had no reason to, and it ended up helping to build my mindset, not the least of which is people that wrote books. Like, however much money you make on your book, it pales in comparison to how hard it was to learn that stuff. And now you're prepared to put it in a book and give all your secrets away. Like, that's crazy. I'm so grateful to people that do that. So my feeling is to reciprocate. I'm going to stand there. I'm going to do that. I'm going to answer questions. Like, dude, if you do that, if you really give, one, it's going to feel awesome. And two, in a hyper-connected social age, you will be rewarded for it, for sure.
So, I mean, you guys heard it here first. I mean, you guys got to see Tom in action, some of his own mannerisms. But I mean, like, you guys got to go check out Impact Theory. I mean, they're all about not just motivation, but getting into an action, creating inspiring little thoughts and frameworks for you to actually take action. And they have some amazing, amazing guests. So I really hope you guys go check out Tom at Impact Theory, because I'm so appreciative of even just the value of just that last answer, right? And I think it's such a healthy way of thinking about things. So, Tom, with us wrapping up, I mean, the last question of the show is, what comes to mind for you when someone says they are a change maker?
That tells me that that's somebody that's really focused on leveraging their skill set to positively, I'll assume, affect things. And I think that's really what should drive humans, right? Like, monetizing is awesome. I think it's super powerful. And I really believe that that is the greatest vehicle for change ever. And it can be done in a way that benefits people. And the easiest thing to monetize is value. So if people focus on adding value to people's lives and making a change by making things better, like, that to me should be the fundamental human condition, because at the end of the day, that's what's going to make you feel fulfilled. And knowing that that's the game you're playing is the game of brain chemistry and feeling good about yourself over the long run. Like, that's the only thing to be.
Yeah, well, Tom, I mean, I love that that was your answer, and I love that you were able to share with us today. Appreciate you being on here, man. I really, really do. And make sure to go follow Impact Theory, because they have some amazing stuff cooking for you guys. Thank you, Tom, for sharing your time with us.
Thanks for having me on, man. It was awesome. I really appreciate it.